Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Today we are joined by Tim Bloomer, Director of Sales Engineering at Cynerio, and Vince Grove, AiRISTA VP of Product Marketing. Now, Webinar Wednesday, we would like to thank our sponsor, Cynerio. Cynerio has one simple goal: to secure every IoT, IoMT, OT, and IT device in healthcare environments, with capabilities ranging from microsegmentation and improved device insight to identify exposed PHI and stopping ransomware. Cynerio protects hospitals from a variety of modern cyber attacks. To learn more about Cynerio at cynerio.com or follow them on X at Cynerio and LinkedIn. Now, just a quick reminder about our Fall MD Expo. We're headed to the Mohegan Sun Casino and Resort in Connecticut in 2 weeks' time, so that's October the 8th to the 10th. Please join us for 3 days of education, networking, and the latest advances in medical technology products and services. For more information and, of course, registration details, please visit mdexposhow.com. Also, just a quick reminder about our HTM mixer, which is being held at the Marriott Resort Griffin Gate in Lexington, Kentucky. That will be November the 15th and 16th. Our mixers are a slightly modified, smaller and shorter duration, less crowded event, but they still provide valuable continuing education, networking and vendor engagement opportunities. For more information and registration details, please visit htmmixer.com. Okay, today's webinar is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be wrapping up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on your webinar dashboard. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our Webinar Wednesday 10th anniversary prizes. Today's prize is a pair of Apple AirPods. So using the questions feature on your dashboard, let me know the answer to the following trivia question. September is National Mushroom Month. Which state is the biggest producer of mushrooms? I'll reveal the answer and our winner at the end of the webinar. Now, as I mentioned earlier, our presenters today are Tim Bloomer and Vince Grove. So Tim and Vince, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Today's webinar, as you can see, we're going to talk about the enhancing device management and extending the cyber protection. I am Tim Bloomer. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering, and along with me I have Vince. He is the VP of Product Marketing at AiRISTA. And the agenda, what we're going to cover today is actually just providing efficient, predictive, secure healthcare delivery, the state of the healthcare cybersecurity, using RTLS to secure your hospitals. And we're going to go through a demo of the workflow orchestration combining security and location, and then evolving guidance we'll wrap up with. Vince, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And thanks for everyone joining today. We appreciate your attendance and attention. This audience, more than probably any other, appreciates the challenges in the HTM community today. Workloads are increasing, and what's behind that? Well, there are a couple of things at play. One is an aging workforce. 40% of biomed techs are 55 and older. 22% are 60 and over. So we've got a situation where the population is starting to age out. Combine that with a decrease in the number of graduates, and moreover, a decrease in the number of programs available out there. What does this result in? Over 50% of biomed techs say their workload is heavy. Well, combine that with the increased workload. For example, the growth in the number of devices per patient room over the last 25 years has grown from 5 to 13. And the average number of devices that an HTM member is responsible for is now 1,200. And now enter cybersecurity and those threats. There's a cyber attack that occurs once every 7.1 minutes. And then moreover, hospitals want to stretch the utility of their equipment even farther. That means more predictive maintenance and scheduled maintenance. All of this adds up to extra work for an already constrained biomed tech team. When it comes to looking for equipment, 30% of a biomed tech's time is spent searching for that equipment. What can you do in order to relieve some of this pressure? Tim, the next slide. It would be coordinating your activity with other staff, together with equipment, and in some cases, even with patients. Well, now, how do you go about facilitating that coordination? Well, there are several ways, and here at AiRISTA, we give you three opportunities to create these kind of workflows. One is the heavy lift, the traditional API integration that you can see in the bottom right corner. We've recently introduced a low-code design environment, which gives you the same kind of capabilities, but with a drag and drop interface connecting microservices. And then finally, we have a very simple drop-down menu approach, and we'll be sharing that with you today as part of the live demo that we'll share about halfway into this webinar. This aligns very closely with what Gartner recommends. Gartner is recommending that hospitals move beyond track and trace to really embrace workflows. And to embrace workflows, you need a couple of things from your RTLS platform. One, you need two-way communicating tags. So all of AiRISTA's tags can be managed from the platform, delivered from the cloud or on-premise. That goes beyond simple configuration of the tag device itself to include things like toggling LEDs, starting buzzers or audible alerts on the tag. All of our tags have buttons to either initiate or to indicate the end of a workflow. And then in some cases, our tags also have a message display option, which again, we'll share with you as part of our demo. We support a variety of wireless infrastructure. In fact, we work closely with the wireless vendors, whether it's Cisco Catalyst, Meraki, HPE, Aruba, Mist, and others, to leverage the investment that you've got there. But when you might want even greater accuracy, we can come in and augment those devices with additional wireless infrastructure. And we'll touch on that in a couple of slides ahead. Now, what I think is Tim, if you could go back just for a moment, what I think is the crown jewel in our portfolio is the software platform called Sophia. And again, Gartner reminds healthcare executives that when you're thinking about an RTLS platform, remember that the tags come and go. What you really want to pay close attention to is the quality of the software, because once you buy the software, you're stuck with it. So put a lot of attention into analysis of the software platform. In the case of AiRISTA's Sophia platform, we re-architected it from the core out about 5 years ago. So what you'll see underpinning the user interface is really an IoT engine. What does that mean? It's a streaming broker-based architecture written in the language Go, so it's AI friendly and machine learning ready. Thanks, Tim. So just a quick summary of the use cases that the Sophia platform supports. We'll focus on asset management today, but on the same platform, you can deploy staff safety, temperature monitoring, and then some of the more advanced capabilities such as wander management, patient flow and bed management, and hand hygiene. Next. Don't take our word for it. Gartner has recognized AiRISTA as leaders in the Magic Quadrant for indoor location tracking for the last 3 years. They also have something called the Critical Capabilities Report. Now, the Critical Capabilities Report is kind of a double click or a deep dive on the MQ. And in the Critical Capabilities Report, they evaluate 16 vendors across 6 use cases. And AiRISTA has consistently come out #1 in terms of people tracking, and we moved up 2 positions this latest year to be #2 in zonal asset tracking. Now, the MQ is an expensive report. If you'd like a free copy, you can go to our homepage, and at the top there's a banner. If you click on the red text, we are making that report available to you for free. And in that, it'll give you the good, the bad, the ugly of the 16 vendors that are evaluated here, including us, AiRISTA. Tim? Now, I've talked a little bit about location accuracy, and in fact, a platform like Cynerio can give you rough location because it associates the device under management with the nearest access point. Now, if you think about the access point, it's probably reaching, a radius of 20 feet. So, if you think about that, that's a circumference of 40 feet. So that's sufficient if you want to find something that might be in a waiting room or around a nurse's station. But if you want to find something that's within several patient rooms, what we at AiRISTA do is we introduce a location engine that can locate assets using 3 or more access points in your environment to get you to within perhaps 20 feet. That would be perhaps a quadrant of 4 patient rooms. Let's say you want patient room accuracy itself. We've got overlay devices, such as a BLE anchor point that you can plug in into the wall in each patient room to give you room level accuracy. And then something we'll demonstrate as part of the demo, which is really kind of cool. It's a new technology from the Bluetooth SIG called angle of arrival. And angle of arrival does away with signal strength altogether. It borrows technology from ultra wideband, and it gets you down to about 1 meter of accuracy. And so we'll bring that to life through some streaming camera feeds that we'll share as part of the demo. So before we get to the demo, Tim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So next, we want to really talk about the state of healthcare as far as the cybersecurity and why does Cynerio exist? So when we look at this, healthcare is the prime target when you think about all the ransomware attacks. As Vince already said, every 7.1 minutes, hospitals are attacked. They're getting more successful, but that is up 86% year over year, and it doesn't look to be slowing down anytime soon. Healthcare is the top target. 24% of the critical infrastructure has had ransomware attacks, and that's reported by the FBI. That's not even including what hasn't been reported. That's just the people that are reaching out to the FBI and telling them, yeah, we have had a ransomware attack. And then out of those ransomware attacks, 43% of those hospitals that suffered at least one, so they might have suffered more, and that's almost half the hospitals around the US that have suffered. Close to half of these have suffered ransomware attacks or multiple ransomware attacks. And then when you think about patient data, 127 million patients' records were exposed in 2023, up 33% from the year over year, but it's also 33% of the patients that the hospitals have seen. So that's a huge number, especially when you think about a patient record is actually more on the black market than a credit card. And lastly, increased mortality. When we think about this, the mortality rates have increased by 35% because as the ransomware takes hold, you can't use that technology. Nurses and doctors have to go back to pen and paper. Patients are transferred, patients are diverted, and it actually will increase the mortality rate. So when we talk about all the different risks and ransomware that have come in, the latest one, Change Healthcare. They paid $22 million in ransom. That cost has now reached the initial 872 million. It's probably over $1 billion by now, and that cost was $100 million a day per provider, should I say. And the records that were exposed, 120 million. That's equivalent to what we've seen in 2023. And they're doing this through social engineering, third-party compromise, and the system vulnerabilities is a big one when you think about healthcare, and it's regulated by the FDA. So they might have a Windows 10 or a Windows 7 or XP in there. But honestly, the sad thing is this Change Healthcare, they're not alone. If you look to the right, you have all these other hospitals, and the worst one is the St. Margaret's. They closed. So that's impacting that local area because that hospital is no longer serving those patients. Sadly, 6 months from now, there will be a new one on the left, and Change Healthcare will be just another line item on the right. And again, the thing to really remember is how often we're seeing these attacks. It's every 7 minutes. A third of these patients are losing their records to the ransomware, and the mortality is at 35%. And all these numbers seem to be going up, except for the attacks. Those are going down to be less time. So we're going to probably see next year that they're under 5 minutes because we have AI coming out and more attacks. So when we look at this and you look at RTLS, it identifies and tracks medical devices, stores and analyzes data, optimizes device utilization plus maintenance. It reduces the cost and improves care. Come on. And then when you think of cybersecurity, it identifies the vulnerabilities and gives them remediations, prioritizes and informs patches efforts, detects and minimizes attacks. We harden the environment, reduce breach, impacts the cost, and overall improves care. So when we look at that, we're really equally aligned to help hospitals reduce that footprint of a risk, know where these devices are, give a full and accurate inventory at all times. So using RTLS to secure hospitals, I want to talk about that. And what we're doing is we're analyzing the systems, we're looking at that hospital network, and we build an inventory and we identify all these risks. And you can see that when you look at any given number or any device, you'll see a number and you'll see the associated risk with that line underneath it. So you know where is your risky devices, what's going on with it. And if I look at like IV pumps, now we're given a group view of what's going on, how many assets we have, how many are at risk, how many have been protected with that east-west segmentation. But we also give you all the risks that we're seeing with the severity, as well as what is it going to take to get rid of these risks or reduce these risks when you look at the remediation and mitigation actions. And you know, the other thing is when we integrate, we can integrate with the wireless LAN controllers and pull over all your access points, and we can actually tell you this IV pump is residing here in this corner. But if we tie in with the RTLS system, we can actually drive that accuracy down, as they said, to a room level or the movement of those devices. This has been told to us that it saves the biomed teams a few hours per device of just locating these devices because we know where they are at all times, and it helps them significantly improve how much work they get done in that particular day. When we look at this IV pump and it shows you a network map, this is not too exciting. It's just showing you that the IV pump actually talks to the gateway. So the benefit here is we understand these profiles, we understand what's going on, and if some anomaly happened, we're going to be able to alert them and say, you know, this IV pump could possibly be under attack or have this ransomware or this malware installed, and then we get ahead of it. We can lock it down before it takes over the entire hospital. And how we do this is we understand those risks. We understand what risks are on these devices. We give every customer the description of it. We give them supporting links so they know it's just not us saying, hey, you have this vulnerability. But for every risk we identify, we give you a mitigation action to take care of those risks and how to reduce the footprint of an attack. And when we talk about that, we actually look at it from network. Can we reduce the risk? Or is it from a biomed where we can eliminate that risk? In this case, we have actions for both teams. You'll see on the top, apply east-west segmentation. When they click create policy, in this case it says edit policy, we've already written that policy. But what we're doing underneath the hood, we understand how these devices should communicate and how the profile of those devices, we will turn around and write the policy for them and virtualize it for 20 days because we're looking at it from a patient care, patient safety, and service disruption. So we want to make sure we're writing the policies correctly before you actually implement them, and your teams can evaluate those, make adjustments if we miss something, because we're looking at it from a traffic perspective. And then you'll see change configuration. We can actually open up a ticket in your ticketing system. The benefit here, once they work on that ticket and close it, then we will close that risk on this side. So we're not causing a swivel chair. We want to make sure that we're making good use of everybody's time. And we're also allowing them, when they close the ticket, to mark it here so we don't have to keep reviewing the same thing. So every risk in our system is actually we give an action for it, so take care of it. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking at the environmental variables. Now, when we talk about that, we're looking at it from a service disruption, patient safety, and patient confidentiality. And what I mean by that is, this low for the service disruption, that's because when we look at the utilization, we have a lot of spare IV pumps. That gives us the benefit of swapping it out should something happen. So those are calculated into the overall risk score. And the other benefit we're given is the utilization. The benefit here is we're able to tell you when's a good time to go find that device, work on that device, based on how often it's being used. So besides helping them locate it quicker, we're also letting them know when's a good time to go find that device. And then we can do that on a fleet level too. So when you're talking about multiple hospitals and patients transferring back and forth, or devices going in and out of ambulances going to the other hospital, they don't get disconnected to keep that equipment in that same area. That equipment goes with them. The benefit here is they can look at it from the global perspective, if you will, and they can say, okay, we got 906 in use, 259 idle, and 128 offline. So we're in good shape. We have a third of the devices basically ready to swap out if needed, but we can transfer them if one site was overutilized and they needed them. But it also, from a financial procurement perspective, we can say, yeah, you're in good shape. You don't need to rent any, or you don't need to buy any. The other thing that we're doing, when we look at the MDS2 forms, one thing that we're doing is, like when we told the biomed team, let's change the configuration, we look at this MDS2 form to validate first off that, hey, they can do that, such as a patch. If you have to put a patch on the system, if the MDS2 form says, no, you cannot patch the system, we're never gonna make that recommendation. That's gonna fall on the network team to go and put a rule in place and do some segmentation to reduce that overall risk. The benefit here is, even though I'm looking at one IV pump, I can look at it and right click and say, okay, show me all that can comply. And I can get a list of all those devices on what complies to that. So even though I'm looking at one IV pump, I might have a list of 30 devices that are able to take a patch, and then I can actually filter on the RTLS information and say, all of those are in this corner. Maybe it's on the access point. It really depends on what integration you have, but the time of resolution is greatly reduced because we're giving them basically a list of everything that's in that section of the hospital so they can take care of it all at once. And when we talk about our overall dashboard, we are patient care, patient safety, and service disruption focused. So everything we're doing, all these risks we identify, they are slanted towards patient care, patient confidentiality, and service disruption. But what's also unique with us is our security posture score. We take all of this information and we boil it up to a security posture score that's based on 100. We try to get customers to 100, but we never claim we're going to get you to 100 because, there's always new devices coming on the network, new zero-day attacks, new zero-day vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of information, but this is always reflecting real time because we're always listening to the hospital. And then you do have quick insights, so you can quickly see what's going on and look at it, what's important to you. And these dashboards can be configured to, how do you want to look at this data? So now I'm going to turn it over to Vince, and we're going to do the workflow and walk through that. Sorry, 1 second. And we're going to turn around and see the demo as real time, so you can actually see some of the video of what's going on with it. Vince, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Tim. Tim, can you confirm that you see a couple of live streaming video feeds on the right and the Sophia interface on the left?
Waiting for a second, it should be coming up.
I can see your shared screen, Vince.
All right, thank you. All right, so what I'd like to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes is share with you kind of a live demo of the SOFIA RTLS platform. So Tim just walked through the ability to identify, troubleshoot, and then correct cyber threats to the devices in your environment, and where you might need to round those up, locate those, or perhaps they're offline, so they're not communicating with an access point. You need to find those, and that's where an RTLS platform like AiRISTA's comes into play. What we've got is a patient room that's mocked up, and you can see the nurse's station and a supply area. We're going to move a few assets and then just track those and show you some of the capabilities of a platform like SOFIA. And as we do that, keep in mind some of the points of differentiation. As Gartner recommends, most RTLS platforms can do traditional track and trace. Tell me where the nearest bariatric wheelchair is, or tell me when the number of infusion pumps drops below a limit. But where we differentiate is really the ability to coordinate through workflows and collaboration, equipment, staff, and in some cases, patients, to really drive efficiency into the common workflows that you take part in every day. The SOFIA interface is on the left-hand side. Again, I'll remind you what you're looking at is underpinned by an IoT engine. This can run in the cloud or on-prem. It's the same experience either way. Up here, you can choose your language. And when we re-architected this, we made it multi-tenant. What does that mean? If you have several facilities or campuses, each of those can be represented by its own partition. Let's jump to the campus called AiRISTA, and we'll jump into the main screen. What you see here are the blue tiles, which represent the use cases. Remember, I'd mentioned the different use cases supported by SOFIA. Asset tracking, which is today's focus point, staff safety, patient flow, bed management. The white tiles represent all of the management tiles. Now, I just want to spend a moment on one of the white tiles, and that's map management. After all, maps are core to an RTLS system. You want to know when tags move in, out, all relative to areas on a floor plan. So we make it very easy for you to manage the floor plan. You can pull this out of, say, a Cisco environment if you choose to make that your single source of truth for floor plans, or you can upload a variety of file types directly into SOFIA and then drop your wireless infrastructure on here. Scaling the map is very simple. You drop a pinpoint between two known locations and enter the distance between those, and your floor plan is automatically scaled. Let's see how easy it is to add a zone. So let's get creative. Let's do kind of a funky zone here. Come out here. All right, now we've got this kind of funky shape. We can go ahead and give it a name. And if it's part of a broader zone, maybe this is a patient room within the emergency department, you can associate that with the emergency department, for example. And now you can do clever things like, tell me when the bed has stayed in maintenance for more than a week, or tell me if that a bladder scanner has left the ward. Alert me when it comes back, for example. All of these are different conditions that you can alert to based on assets and their location. Let's come back to the main screen, and let's take a look up here in the upper right. We've got a persistent search tool or search bar. Let's search for example, beds. Now we see all of the beds in our demo center, and if we double click on a name here, it brings up the location, and sure enough, this is the floor plan. You can see the patient room, and there, that dot that you see there represents a tag on the bed. Up here on the search tool, we also have the ability to search for all assets by department. So let's pick on the emergency department again, take a look at all the assets that belong to the emergency department. And as you know, active tags require batteries, and those do need maintenance. So let's take a look at all the tags whose battery is less than 25% charged. And now we can go out and we can attend to those. Let's come back here and let's drill into asset tracking. So remember, the blue tiles are the use cases, really focused on asset tracking today. So let's click into that. And if we open assets, this is a list of all of the assets that we've got. We've got an opportunity, it shows the location of all of these. So we can print this out to track them down or click on it to bring up the floor plan once again. It's also this asset interface where we would do the integration with your CMMS platform. So as Tim was saying, a lot of our customers want a single source of truth for asset inventory and management, and that's typically the CMMS platform. So just like Cynerio, AiRISTA integrates with CMMS platforms to pull out all of the asset information and keep those in sync so that you've got consistency between not just AiRISTA, but Cynerio as well as your CMMS platform. Let's go through a common use case. Remember how I explained that we have 3 different ways to facilitate integrations and workflows. One is the heavy lift traditional approach using RESTful APIs. The other is a low code environment. And then I described that simple to use pull down menu. That's here, if we navigate on the left in Rule Composer. Let's go ahead and open that. Within Rule Composer, we have several rules already set up. If we wanted to create a new rule, we would add a rule and then associate a condition with it. Things like area. Tell me when something enters or leaves an area. A button push. Remember, most of our tags have buttons and those can initiate or complete a workflow. Dwell or absence. Tell me when an asset has been in an area or has been outside of an area for more than a specified period of time. Motion sensing, and then par level. Well, let's pick on par level a little bit. We've got a par level rule that's here. Let's go ahead and edit that and see how easy that is to create. Again, we identified the condition. It's a par level. They ask us for the minimum and the maximum inventory level. And when those thresholds are exceeded, we're going to generate an alert and let people know about that. In this case, you can see a single pump in the patient room. When we drop below 1, the inventory will go to 0 and we're going to generate an alert. What assets do these apply to? Well, they're all the infusion pumps, but just the infusion pumps in the emergency department. So this is a very specific rule. And then which zones do these apply to? In our case, it's going to apply to the pump in the patient room. And what do we do when we do get the alert? We do a couple of things. We have an option to send an email, in this case, an SMS text message, which will be sent to my phone. And we can also send a notification to our personnel tag. Remember, I said that some of our tags have message display capabilities. Brang, who is now in the hospital area in our demo, will hold up that personnel tag and show you what's written on that. And then we also have an opportunity, even though this is a simple drop-down menu, to give you the power to integrate with third-party platforms. In this case, if we use our API interface, remember I described our RESTful library, this is how easy it is to set up a REST call to integrate with another application. And these are all the variables that we make available to exchange with another application. Just like a RESTful API, we have a streaming API. We also have web-oriented APIs as well. So let's go ahead. You can see a red X next to this rule. Let's go ahead and enable it. Right now it's not running. If we come up here and enable it, you'll see it now has a green check. So this par level rule that is waiting for our inventory level to drop below 1 is now running. Let's go here again, navigating on the left to maps. Let's open the map of our floor plan. So this again is the floor plan. Here is the infusion pump. You see the dot there? Here's our infusion pump on the live feed. Now we've got that alert that's running in the background. Barang, can you do me a favor? Can you walk the pump out? Now that tag is chirping every couple of seconds. So there'll be a little bit of a lag. You'll see Barang in the live camera feed walk the pump out, and you'll see the dot on the floor plan lag by just a couple of seconds. That's the tag chirping. Every time it chirps, we update that location. Now he crosses out of the patient room, and you can see the accuracy that we're getting. As soon as he crossed that threshold, which represents the edge, the hall separating the patient room from the hall, we get the alert, and there is the alert, a par level alert specific to infusion pumps. And you can see the ending point for the pump here on the floor plan as Barang wheeled that out. If we come in here to alerts, let's take a look at the alerts. Oh, and by the way, Barang, did you get a message to your phone?
I did, and I was sharing it, or to the tag, and I was sharing that here on the camera.
All right, so as you see, if you remember that rule we created, we sent a message to the tag, and Barang is showing you what that message looks like. I also got a message to my phone. If you remember, I had sent an SMS text. I've got a message to my phone, and if I turn on my camera just for a moment, you can see that message on my phone. Let's go ahead and close this alert out. And let's take a look at the history of alerts that we've got. You remember I'd mentioned that the tags chirp periodically. Some tags will chirp every couple of seconds if you want to track them very closely with fine grained kind of breadcrumbs, or other assets that might not move very often. They may chirp only maybe once a minute or sometimes even once an hour for that matter. But every time a tag chirps, it updates its location. And when we capture that location, we store it. If you think about it, that's a lot of information. If a tag is chirping every 2 seconds and we're capturing an XY coordinate, we're storing that over months and months. That's a lot of data. What can you do with that? You can do things like this. If we come in here and do a playback, we can play back, enter a start time, a stop time, and then play back the path that that asset has taken over that time period. So we'll click play, and we'll see the path that that infusion pump has taken. You can see it didn't go very far. That's not very exciting, but if you're doing things, if you're tracking assets that do move quite a bit throughout your environment, this is a good way to see the path that they've taken. Maybe if hoarding is occurring, or maybe if there's even theft or missing assets, you can see the path that it took and the path it took to the exit and the last point that that asset was actually seen. Barang, let's do a maintenance request on the wheelchair. So at this point, Barang, if you could go to the wheelchair. Chris, can you turn on the spotlight? We're going to show you, I'd mentioned BLE, angle of arrival, and tracking things to a meter of accuracy. Every time the asset tag on the wheelchair updates, we're collecting the XY location. In this case, it's very accurate, and we're feeding that to this spotlight. This shows integration of third-party devices with a location tracking system. This spotlight could just as easily be a PTZ camera. It could be door locks, it could be sirens, it could be messages that are pushed to a display. But again, the tag is updating every couple of seconds. Every time it updates, we provide that new XY location to the spotlight, and we're updating this. You'll notice that the spotlight is not moving very much. So again, we're updating this location every couple of seconds. It's very accurate, but the probability is very high as well. We're on the 3rd generation of our AOA antenna, and so we've got the location accuracy very consistent with this. Now, certainly you wouldn't need angle of arrival and sub-meter accuracy throughout your entire facility, but this is useful for certain parts of the hospital. We're finding it used in operating rooms, for example, supply rooms, and things like that. Chris, thank you. You can go ahead and turn that off. And then to wrap things up, Chris, let's assume that there's some kind of maintenance, there's attention that needs to be paid to this asset. If you could push the button on the tag, we're going to generate another workflow. And this workflow, again, will alert the team that this particular piece of equipment needs attention. And we also automate a ServiceNow ticket in order to get that whole process kicked off. So he's showing it there in the camera feed. Very good. All right, thank you very much. All right, so we're going to turn it back over to Tim, and Tim is going to wrap this up for us.
Great, thank you. So the last thing we want to talk about is the evolving guidance. And when we talk about that, you know, the new guidance that's out there from HPH cybersecurity performance goals, you know, that we have essentials and enhanced goals. And really the essentials goals, everybody should be doing this when we look at the mitigating known vulnerabilities, you know, the email security. Most of those are already done because most of it falls on the IT side versus the medical. But these have just been published this year. The goal is to prioritize high impact security practices, the essential goals, today's bare minimum, to be quite honest. And when you get to the next level of defense, you're getting into the enhanced goals. It does do the hiccup compliance and NIST controls. And we have a free download if you copy that link or take a snapshot of that link. But really what it's doing in short is when we look at this, these enhanced goals, both AiRISTA and Cynerio are taking care of the inventory part of it very well. And when we do that integration that Vince was talking about with your CMMS, it keeps all three systems in sync. So you still have your central source of truth, but yet it really enhances both of our solutions to really make sure you're utilizing the best of all the systems that you have. But really the key takeaway is that the guidance is for incredible helpful for both of us to cover the majority of the enhanced goals, including the asset inventory. When we talk about going beyond the asset inventory and extending this protection, we have a component called NDRH. This is a network detection and response for healthcare. It's a full threat life cycle, so we can have detection, analysis, correlation, response, and we have supported remediations as well. The difference between us and a regular NDR solution is when you think about NDR and you think of the RFCs, if it doesn't understand the packet, it has to let it go through. And we actually have 200 plus more protocols because we are focused on healthcare. We understand those protocols and we're able to analyze those, give real-time threat modeling and contextual whitelisting. So we don't have to turn around and say, okay, is this normal or not? We already know this, and this is actually a day one value. But now if you have places, systems in place for the IT side, we can complement this and finish the visibility from an NDR perspective into your hospital because we're covering those medical devices as well, and we can integrate with those other solutions to give you that full visibility. So if you want to learn more about it, we do have the tech overview, basics of NDR, complementary tech, NDR versus EDR versus XDR, and the core tech capabilities. These are all available for download. The functional details, the traffic modeling, the breach detection, things like that. And then addressing the healthcare challenges, you know, the resource constraints, complementing tech with human analysts. So we do all of that automatically, and we give you examples of these attacks and the timelines of these. And thank you, Vince, for participating. That was a great demo, appreciate it. And turn it over to the moderator for Q&A if you have any questions for us.
Perfect. Yes, I have. Thanks, Tim and Vince. The first question that's come in, have your teams been able to calculate how much time is saved by automating device tracking and discovery?
Well, there are studies that have been done, and some of the customers that we've worked with, it's been saving about 30% of biomed tech's time trying to track down equipment. This includes equipment that's online and offline. If you think about equipment that may have gone off into other parts of the facility, all of that complicates things and extends the times. Tim, I think you shared something that it was several hours over a period of time, and then if all of that adds up. Exactly.
Yeah, we've done studies, or our customers have told us that usually on average it saves them a couple hours of finding the device, because without a solution like either of ours, it's tough to find these. They're hunting the hospital and trying to match up serial numbers, and AiRISTA has all that information right there. tied in with the CMMS, they can look at that data and know, oh, I got to go right here. It saves literally hours per device.
Yeah, the other thing that's really handy about these types of platforms, both Cynerio and AiRISTA's RTLS platform, is we can identify or distinguish between assets that are currently in use and those that are not. So obviously, if you want to pull something in for maintenance, you can't grab something that's in use. So focus on those that are currently not in use. And again, it's a time saver, and you can flag those that are currently in use, and when they become available, go out and hunt those down.
Perfect. Another question here is, how much effort is required to deploy and maintain systems like AiRISTA and Cynerio?
Vince, why don't you answer first and I'll go second.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yes, this is a really insightful question, and this is a conversation that we have with our customers as they're considering platforms. One of the challenges with RTLS is if there isn't an identified kind of owner, whether that's a group of individuals or an organization, it will become shelfware, to be honest with you. And so you do need to identify an organization or group that will take responsibility for that. So that would be things like maintenance of the tags. That's primarily battery swapping. But because it is delivered from the cloud, if that's an option that you take, it's very quick to get set up and running. And then we've got services to help you with, your initial workflows, getting all your users on board, getting your assets pulled in from the CMMS platform. All of that can go fairly fast. We've got pretty good tools and techniques to get that going. But again, I remind everybody, it's really important that you have identified owners to really keep the system in use and query your users to see how you might extend its usefulness. What do you think, Tim?
Pretty much the same thing. When we talk about deploying, our deployment is pretty basic, and we have our team there. But the rule of thumb for us is one collector per hospital location. We want to be in the core so we can see all the traffic, both inside the hospital and what's leaving the hospital. So we say north, south, or east, west. Rule of thumb is it takes no more than an hour to actually install one of the collectors. So times however many hospitals. But once it's in, we take care of all the maintenance of those devices, and then running the system. It really depends on how active you want to be and how aggressive your cybersecurity program is, because we've had, a half a FTE to a full FTE, depending on what's going on, because we make those recommendations for all those risks and we write those policies. So we make it very easy for the teams to deploy policies for east-west segmentation. Our customer success team's telling us that it's usually a new policy can be written and deployed within 6 to 7 weeks because of the technology we have.
Okay, so another question here is, do you have examples of attacks that were stopped due to improved device visibility?
Say that again?
Do you have any examples of attacks that were stopped due to improved device visibility?
Sure. We have. I've had them in POC. So our NDRH is designed to be a day one value because it is a SaaS solution, and we understand these profiles. As soon as we deploy and we start looking, we can detect anomalies. I just had a hospital the other day that we picked up on an anomaly when the industry, as we say, hasn't even picked up that it's a new Command and Conquer server. It was deployed in Germany 3 hours before, and we triggered the NDR incident right away because we knew the behavior of that device should never be talking to this device that was out on the internet. So depending on what kind of malware or ransomware or attack that's going on, we have different recommendations, whether it's an IT asset or whether it's a medical asset, and we'll show you the playbook based on these are the actions you need to take to stop or eliminate connections with that.
Okay, I've got one that is aimed at Vince here. Is how long does it take to deploy a product like AiRISTA into a smaller hospital, say about 150 beds?
Yeah, good question. And again, if you're deploying from the cloud, the management and standing that up, that's all pretty straightforward. At that point, it's a matter of activating tags, associating them with assets, getting the assets up, and then your users into the system. If you're looking for days, that's probably about a week's worth of effort from start to finish. And then if you wanted to deploy the platform on-prem, that's probably another day or two.
Perfect. Now, before we wrap up today, have either of you got any kind of top tips or anything you'd like to summarize?
Vince, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, sure. I'll just go back to what the conversations that Gartner is having with healthcare executives. And, they're having this conversation that says, where are you along the real-time health system maturity model? And most hospitals will admit, look, we're kind of a reactive organization. When things go sideways, it really throws us off and it's hard to get back on track. And what Gartner is advocating is for them to start looking at platforms that facilitate kind of coordination and workflows. And that's where our platform really shines, is the ability to create sophisticated or even simple workflows. And again, as part of that conversation, Gartner is recommending that that hospitals take a good close look at the software platform, because at the end of the day, look, tags come and go, right? You'll find a new type of tag introduced, a couple times a year. What you're stuck with is the software platform. And that's really where the majority of your investment is going. And that's where you've got the opportunity to extend value across the entire organization and facilitating several use cases. So, the recommendation here would be pay particular attention to the quality of the software platform and its ability to scale.
Yeah, and I would take away from this is, we talked a lot about the risk and the ransomwares and the attacks on healthcare, because a lot of these devices are locked down, cannot take patches, cannot be upgraded. So you really need to have, beyond the inventory, you need to understand the risks and have actionable risks to help reduce that footprint. But beyond that, as we talked about the NDRH, you need to have a solution that's aware of what's going on in the hospital. So even if you have one of our competing products, NDRH can be installed right alongside without any extra work from the network team as far as getting another span, but we can help protect the hospital from an attack, regardless if they have another solution or not, or use ours. It's all built into the solution to really take advantage of our knowledge of healthcare.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim and Vince, for your time today and for a really informative presentation. Thank you. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit Cynerio's website to learn more about the services they provide to the industry. So please visit cynerio.com. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is Pennsylvania, closely followed by California. So congratulations to our winner, Dakota Brown Goodwin in California. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your C certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1C credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download your certificate directly from your computer once you've submitted the survey. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Now, if you've missed any of our past webinars, including any by Cynerio, please visit webinarwednesday.live to view our whole webinar archive. We'll be back next week with another webinar, so visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and, of course, complimentary registration. Thank you all once again for your time today, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.